What if everything we've ever been told about the beginning of time was a lie? A rogue hacker just leaked what appears to be NASA's most protected images.
I originally hacked the website for investigation. I had 3 backdoors in their system. I was only using that backdoor to exfiltrate data every single day.
Snapshots that might have captured something before the Big Bang.
These are amazing images that we've never seen before.
These images convey all the different kinds of things that we are hoping to explore with this observatory.
These weren't meant for the public. Hidden in a locked archive, the files show patterns, light forms, and even structures. Why would NASA bury this? And what are they trying to keep us from seeing? Join us as we reveal how NASA was hacked and its top secret images leaked. The Great Hack. Scientists and astrologers have believed that the universe began with the Big Bang for nearly 100 years. According to them, a tiny, burning hot point exploded around 13.8 billion years ago, and that explosion, they say, started everything: space, time, and every galaxy we know. NASA supported this idea, and one of their biggest proofs came from the COBE satellite, which found leftover heat from the early universe. This discovery was so important that it even won a Nobel Prize. In 2021, NASA launched the James Webb Space Telescope, a powerful machine that sees deep into space using infrared light. Some of the galaxies it captured are so far away that their light has been traveling toward us for over 13 billion years. It's like looking into the past. However, things became strange here. Some galaxies look too big and too advanced for how young the universe should have been. That has confused many scientists and opened new questions, but the common question was, what came before the Big Bang? Then, at the start of this year, something strange happened. Ryan Montgomery, a popular ethical hacker known for uncovering government secrets, made headlines. Rumors spread online. Ryan found secret NASA images showing something from before the Big Bang, something they tried to hide. The internet exploded. Ryan has a history of exposing shocking truths, so when people heard this, many believed it could be real. One image, shared widely across social media, was said to leave Ryan completely stunned. It showed a massive structure of billions of stars forming a pattern that looked too perfect to be random. It looked designed, like a message sent by something much more intelligent and powerful than us. Conspiracy theorists jumped on the story. For them, this was what they had waited years for. But just as fast as the hype started, Ryan broke the silence. In a post on X, he said, "I did not find NASA alien photos on the dark web." And just like that, the internet split in two. Some said Ryan was forced to deny it, while others believed it was a lie. If this story was false from the beginning, why choose Ryan Montgomery instead of one of the well-known conspiracy theorists? The man who sees what others can't. Ryan Montgomery isn't your average hacker. He's one of the most feared names in the internet's dark corners, but for all the right reasons. He's an ethical hacker who uses his skills to protect people instead of hurting them. For years, he has been on a personal crusade to catch predators, expose traffickers, and keep children safe. As the Chief Technology Officer at the Sentinel Foundation, Ryan leads a team that works side by side with law enforcement. They use innovative tools and fast thinking to track down some of the world's worst criminals. His team doesn't just sit behind screens, they take real action. Ryan also helped build pentester.com, a platform that finds hidden weaknesses in websites and apps before hackers do. It's a digital shield for people and companies. He has spoken on big shows like The Sean Ryan Show, where he breaks down dark web crimes, scams, and hidden threats in ways anyone can understand. He is also ranked #1 on TryHackMe, one of the world's top hacking platforms. Conspiracy theorists likely saw him as the perfect, trustworthy face to spread the rumor. But not every claim of a government cover-up should be dismissed. After all, a major one was exposed in 2015. The Mystery Whistleblower. In early 2015, journalist Linda Moulton Howe received a strange email leading her to one of the most mysterious stories ever told about Antarctica. The message came from Brian, a retired U.S. Navy flight engineer who had flown missions over Antarctica during the 1980s and 1990s. Brian finally decided to speak out after keeping it to himself for over 20 years. He said he spotted something unbelievable during one of his flights. A giant, perfectly round shape carved into the icy surface. Below it was a glowing cave, large and unlike anything he had ever seen. As he tried to look closer, his plane's equipment suddenly failed. Everything stopped working at once. He was forced to reboot his systems mid-air and quickly return to base. But the moment he landed, government agents were already waiting. They took all the flight records and warned the entire crew to stay silent, to never talk about what they had seen. So, what was hidden beneath the ice? Did Brian and his team stumble upon something out of this world? The story that could not be ignored. In his detailed letter, Brian described everything that happened that day. It was 1987, and he and his crew were on a routine resupply flight out of McMurdo Station when they got orders to pick something up from a remote site deep in the Antarctic interior. When they arrived, what they found was unsettling. The camp was wrecked and empty, no people, no signs of life. But the real shock came from what they'd heard before arriving. Brian recalled strange chatter at base, rumors about a missing Antarctic station, and weird radio signals from beneath the ice. Some officers even claimed they heard unknown voices speaking in strange languages over the radio before some temporary stations vanished. The strange silence at the camp already had them on edge, but things got worse. As they prepared to leave, the co-pilot suddenly noticed a huge glowing object flying silently past the cockpit. Brian described it as a smooth, white, lozenge-shaped craft, at least 100 feet wide. It didn't make a sound. Frightened, the crew rushed through their task and headed back. They filed a report about what they'd seen as soon as they landed. But just days later, things took a dark turn. A group of men in black suits and high-ranking Navy officials showed up at McMurdo. They told Brian and his crew to retract their statements and warned them that discussing what they saw would bring serious consequences. After their first strange encounter, things at McMurdo slowly returned to normal. Brian and his team tried to move on, pushing the memory aside. But a few weeks later, something even more bizarre happened. While flying over a remote region, Brian picked up a weak distress signal. It was coming from inside a massive ice shelf. Curious, he traced the signal to a strange, glowing circle in the ice, unlike anything they'd ever seen. The light pulsing from it didn't look natural. The team decided to loop back for a closer look, but everything shut down as they turned the plane. All systems failed simultaneously. Lights, controls, navigation, everything went dark. The aircraft had been flying fine moments earlier. In a panic, Brian switched to emergency power and pulled them away from the area as fast as he could. Before landing, he radioed in a report about the glowing hole, but when he returned, he was shocked to find classified vehicles already waiting. This time, the men in black weren't just from the military, they were from DARPA. Once again, they pulled him aside and warned him to stay silent. The second warning hit Brian harder than the first. He began digging deeper, recalling all the odd stories he'd heard. Missing scientists, empty research camps, strange signals no one could trace. Slowly, it started to make sense. Whatever he'd seen wasn't just an isolated event. It was part of something bigger, something the government didn't want anyone to uncover. Brian couldn't shake the feeling that people deserved to know the truth. For years, he carried the weight of what he'd seen. But it wasn't until he came across investigative journalist Linda Moulton Howe that he finally found someone willing to listen and to help him share his story with the world. How true is Brian's story? Linda couldn't shake off Brian's story. It sounded too strange to be accurate, but too detailed to ignore. After some thought, she decided to look into it quietly. Over the next few years, she ran a private investigation, contacting military contacts and tracking down some of Brian's former teammates to see if their stories matched his. What she found was chilling. Some spoke of strange aircraft near Antarctica, machines that moved faster than anything they had ever seen. Others remembered hearing strange radio signals from under the ice, sounds that didn't match any known language. But Linda wasn't going to rely on stories alone. She wanted proof, so she dug deeper and came across hidden satellite photos. These images showed dome-like structures that appeared in Antarctica and were later destroyed without a trace. It looked like someone was trying to hide something. She also found obituaries of scientists who were said to have died suddenly during their time in Antarctica. These were researchers rumored to have gone missing during secret missions. The timing and cause of death raised red flags. As she dug, Linda uncovered records of classified trips to Antarctica led by high-level military and science teams. These weren't ordinary missions. They seemed to have special goals that had nothing to do with weather or wildlife. And while Antarctica is meant to be a peaceful zone for science, Linda found signs of growing tension, disputes over land, hidden resources, and even nuclear talks. The more she found, the more dangerous it got. Linda started receiving threats, but now her research has gained serious public attention. With more eyes watching, those trying to silence her find it harder to act. What Linda discovered has changed the way we look at conspiracies. If she's right, the government could be hiding extraterrestrial secrets that could change the future of our world. History repeating itself. Brian wasn't the first to speak out about strange government cover-ups in Antarctica. Decades earlier, in the early 1900s, a famous American explorer named Admiral Richard Byrd had a similar experience. Byrd became a national hero after flying over the North and South Poles in the 1920s. But what happened during one of his later missions in 1947 shocked everyone who heard about it. During that Antarctic expedition, Byrd claimed that he and his team discovered a massive entrance leading to an underground world. Inside, they found something unbelievable, a huge land with no ice, filled with green forests, tall mountains, and even massive animals that looked like they were from another time. But before they could explore more, they saw a flying disc-shaped craft, and that's when they knew they had to leave. When Byrd returned home, he talked about what he saw. But almost immediately, government agents stepped in. Just like what happened to Brian, Byrd's reports were taken, and he and his crew were warned to stay silent. But Byrd wouldn't stop talking. Because of his fame and trusted reputation, many people believed him. That made him a problem. Since they couldn't shut him up easily, officials took another approach. They put him through a formal psychological review under Navy supervision. Not long after, the government claimed Byrd had suffered from a mental breakdown caused by the extreme cold, something they called polar delirium. Members of his crew who had started to back up his story suddenly went quiet. Byrd also pulled away from the public eye and rarely spoke about the event again until his death. It was clear the government would do anything to keep this story buried. Still, their attempt to silence Byrd only made people more suspicious. Rumors spread that the government was hiding something big. Some believed it had to do with national security. Others thought it was about secret resources in Antarctica, or even a global power struggle that the public was never supposed to know about. Back then, the US Navy feared that hidden Soviet bases in Antarctica could be turned into powerful weapons sites. At the same time, scientists were shaken by strange discoveries in physics and new forms of medicine that seemed too advanced. Politicians, on their part, wanted to avoid mass panic and chose to keep the truth away from the public. But Byrd wasn't silenced just because of global politics or science. His claims touched something deeper. What he saw threatened to expose secrets about where humans come from and what's truly out there. In fact, recently declassified FBI files confirmed that every person on Byrd's 1947 mission was watched closely until they passed away. The government saw them as serious threats during the Cold War. Years later, Brian's story of seeing a glowing hole in the ice and strange silver discs sounds almost identical to Byrd's tale of the hidden land. And just like Byrd, Brian faced heavy pressure to stay quiet. Despite the years between their experiences, both men were met with silence and cover-ups. But now things are different. Linda has the internet on her side. She's launched an online campaign using the hashtag #HatAntarcticaTruth, and more people are starting to pay attention. Their stories, once buried, are finally finding light. The controversy about NASA hiding pictures related to the Big Bang has been proven false. However, NASA has undeniably covered up many controversial moments in space over the years. Aliens in space. UFO enthusiasts often point to astronauts' comments and NASA photos as potential proof of extraterrestrial encounters, considering them reliable evidence. However, in a letter from 1970, Robert F. Allnutt, NASA's Assistant Administrator for Legislative Affairs, revealed a surprising fact. After 15 years of manned space missions, right up to the moon landing, astronauts had returned with no solid proof, either verbal or photographic, to support the idea of extraterrestrial spacecraft. Despite this, UFO conspiracy theories were reignited in 2009 when UFO enthusiasts uploaded NASA footage to YouTube. They claimed the videos were proof the government was hiding information about extraterrestrial encounters, even though the footage offered little more than vague imagery and unclear context. One famous incident occurred during the Gemini 4 mission. Pilot Jim McDivitt claimed to have seen a white cylindrical shape with a white pole sticking out of it. He took 2 photos, but his partner, Ed White, was asleep then. Then, during the Gemini 7 mission, astronauts mentioned a bogey some believed was a reference to a UFO. Rumors also swirled about Neil Armstrong, who allegedly saw multiple UFOs during the Apollo 11 mission. Armstrong himself later said he saw 2 glowing blue orbs. Then, in 2020, cosmonaut Ivan Wagner posted a video on Twitter showing what he thought were UFOs captured in a time-lapse of the Aurora Australis. He called them space guests, and Roscosmos, the Russian space agency, shared the footage. If even the Russian space agency found the encounter strange enough to post publicly, it's hard to believe that NASA hasn't seen similar things. The difference? NASA seems more focused on shutting down theories than exploring them. Why do all these conspiracies and strange encounters happen only in the United States? The truth is, they don't. People from all over the world have reported mysterious sightings for decades. Terrifying flying saucers encounters. In Mexico. On May 3, 1975, 23-year-old pilot Carlos de los Santos experienced something he would never forget. He had just dropped off some engineers in Zihuatanejo and was flying solo back to Mexico City in his Piper PA-24. The skies were clear, the weather was good, and everything seemed normal, until it wasn't. Roughly 65 kilometers from Mexico City, Carlos suddenly felt uneasy. Though his plane had been thoroughly checked before takeoff, a strange tension filled the air. At 10,000 feet, something odd happened. He noticed a weird sound on the radio and spotted something unusual. A saucer-shaped object darted toward his plane and vanished just as quickly. Seconds later, he felt that unsettling sense of being watched again. This time, 2 more objects appeared, one on each aircraft side. They looked gray, about 4 meters wide, with dome-like tops and dark windows. They were smaller than his plane, but the sight shook him. Before he could gather his thoughts, a third object appeared straight ahead, speeding at him. Fearing a collision, Carlos tried to dive by pushing the control wheel forward, but nothing happened. The controls were frozen. His plane wouldn't respond. Powerless and panicked, he braced for impact. The object swerved under the cockpit just in time. A loud thud followed. It felt like something hit the bottom of the plane. Unsure of what damage had been done, Carlos remained frozen, unable to control the aircraft. Still shaken and scared, Carlos faced all 3 strange objects swirling around his aircraft. They weren't just hovering, they seemed to be toying with him. Desperate, he grabbed the radio and sent a distress call to Mexico City's airport. What came next was a recording that would later be played on British television. His voice, filled with fear, crackled through the speakers. Conversely, air traffic controller Julio Cesar Diaz recalled hearing that panicked voice. He said the call was loud, rushed, and fearful, a young pilot in trouble. Carlos kept shouting that 3 unknown flying objects were circling his plane, and he didn't know what they were. As seconds ticked by, Carlos struggled to keep calm. He kept glancing around, wondering, are these things human-made? Are they from somewhere else? The uncertainty was terrifying. It felt like the objects had taken over, like they were guiding the flight for their reasons. Then, things got worse. Without warning, the aircraft began climbing sharply, and Carlos wasn't the one flying it. Something else had taken over. The plane was rising higher and faster than he had planned, headed into who knows where. He couldn't stop it. He couldn't slow it down. All he could do was sit there, helpless. As they reached over 4,500 meters, Carlos was overwhelmed. He began thinking about his family, parents, and life. He was young, just 23, and here he was stuck in the sky with strange crafts surrounding him, unable to fight back or escape. He later called it every pilot's worst nightmare, and just when it seemed like it would never end, everything stopped. One by one, the mysterious objects disappeared, like they had done what they came to do. Carlos reached for the controls again, and this time, they worked. His hands trembled, but he was able to guide the plane down to a safer altitude. Finally, Mexico City was in sight. Carlos couldn't shake the fear. Even as the strange objects vanished, the feeling that they could return at any moment stayed with him. He pushed the plane to descend as fast as possible, wanting nothing more than to get back on solid ground. But something else went wrong when he thought the worst was over. As he prepared to land, warning lights in the cockpit started flashing. The landing gear wasn't locking into place, and Carlos was stunned. The 3 green lights that usually confirmed the wheels were down kept flickering, showing they were deployed but not secured. He feared the earlier hit from the third object might have damaged the landing system. Carlos quickly radioed the control tower again, with a new fear. The wheels might collapse on landing. Julio Cesar Diaz recalled how serious the situation became. If the gear failed during touchdown, the plane could skid, a spark could fly, and the fuel tank might explode. It was a nightmare scenario, and no one wanted to take that chance. The airport went into emergency mode. Everything shut down, and no planes could land or take off. All eyes were on Carlos and his small, damaged aircraft. Carlos was told to try landing any way he could with few options. He spotted a grassy strip between the runways and aimed for it, hoping it would soften the impact. His voice was shaking, and so were his hands. With his heart pounding and tears almost forming, he focused on one thing: surviving. But the drama wasn't over just yet. As Carlos touched down, bracing for disaster, something unexpected happened. The landing gear held firm. Against all odds, the plane landed safely. Carlos was relieved and didn't even wait to shut off the engine. He flung the door open and ran out, breathing heavily, muttering, "The plane is okay. I'm okay. Everything's okay." His relief didn't last long. Word quickly spread that the airport had been shut down. Reporters and TV crews swarmed the scene. Stunned and shaken, Carlos was in the middle of a media storm. His wild account of 3 mysterious flying objects chasing and disabling his plane made headlines nationwide. Airport authorities acted fast. Carlos was taken straight to the aviation center for questioning and examination. Doctors later confirmed he was in good health, and there were no traces of alcohol or drugs in his system. He was cleared to keep flying. But the real proof came from the radar room. Air traffic controllers Julio Cesar Interion Diaz and Emilio Estañol Lopez backed up Carlos's claims. They saw the strange objects on their screens, making the same odd movements Carlos had described in real time. Mexico's Civil Aeronautics Authority recorded and officially documented their testimony on May 8, 1975. Carlos's story didn't just stop in Mexico, it caught the attention of the world. News outlets from around the globe wanted to speak to him. But with the attention came something darker. He said men dressed in black suits visited him several times, warning him to keep quiet or risk serious consequences for him and his family. Still, Carlos refused to stay silent. Even after all these years, he continues to share his story, determined not to let it be forgotten. And Carlos wasn't alone. Many other pilots in Mexico have reported seeing strange things in the skies. The real question is, What does the Mexican government know about these encounters? And why haven't they said more? The Great Unveil. On September 13, 2017, Mexico held its first ever congressional hearing about UFOs. Lawmakers listened closely as bold claims were made. We might not be alone in the universe. The main speaker was Jaime Maussan, a Mexican journalist known for his longtime interest in UFOs. He brought something shocking: 2 small bodies he said were not human. These figures, displayed in glass cases, had 3 fingers on each hand and long, stretched-out heads. According to Maussan, they were found in Peru in 2017, close to the ancient Nazca lines. He claimed that carbon dating tests done by Mexico's National Autonomous University showed the bodies were about 1,000 years old. Maussan firmly stated that the remains did not belong to any known species on Earth and encouraged scientists worldwide to study them. He ended by saying, "We are not alone." Another expert, Dr. Jose de Jesus Zalte Benitez, from the Mexican Navy's Health Research Center, said they had done X-rays, 3D scans, and DNA tests. Based on those results, he also believed the bodies were not human. Later, the university clarified that its role was only to help determine the sample's age. It did not confirm whether the bodies were alien. Congressman Sergio Gutierrez, from the ruling party, said he hoped this hearing would lead to more open talks about these kinds of sightings and strange events in the future. He said the discussion left people thinking and asking more questions. Across the border, the U.S. government has also started taking UFO sightings more seriously. After years of silence, the Pentagon is now looking into reports from military pilots, and NASA has even launched a special panel to study them. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.